loads of you getting in touch already this morning, particularly on Oliver Dowden's resignation of the by-elections. Tracy says, I think it's more the rats leaving the sinking ship rather than feeling the elector's pain, which is what Oliver Dowden said in his letter.
Yeah, Kenny says this was always going to happen, so don't believe the Labour followers who will say that this is a bombshell result, because without doubt, Tiverton will come back to the Tories at the general election. Wakefield they can have. Ooh, Kenny.
Harsh, that's a bit harsh. Rachel from London says, I'm devastated and very concerned for who's going to run this country. For all of Boris's faults, deep down there was a sense of security about his leadership in keeping us safe. The rat seems to be running from the sinking ship.
Ooh, really? Did you have a sense of security in his leadership? Sue says, very convenient that Boris is in Rwanda. Boris needs to sort this illegal immigrants problem, yes, but we need the cost of living crisis to be top of the list. We are going to have more strikes, more unrest. People have had enough.
And Karen Wilkinson says, if I was voting for a new MP in either of these elections, I'd be thinking about why the others left. Because, of course, they both left in, well, one in a bit of a scandal, and the other one is now in prison. It's not the Prime Minister that has lost, it's saying how disgruntled they were with the last MPs. I knew we wouldn't win these seats. Well, keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So let's take a look at today's front pages, which are frankly a bit behind the times. The Mail is reporting, of course, on the Rwanda story, saying Boris has urged critics to keep an open mind on the policy ahead of his meeting with his critic, Prince Charles.
The Express has an exclusive on a Strasbourg judge that has criticised the secrecy with which the European Court of Human Rights conducted itself over the Rwanda migrant flight ruling.
The Guardian reports that airport staff are set to vote on strike action as the result of disruption to life in the UK widens.
The drive for green fuel is to be relaxed as the PM pushes to cut land used for biofuel. It's a little bit confusing. The story in the Telegraph says it could affect our net zero pledges.
And the Sun says the Queen is back in the saddle. She is riding again, a year after being told to quit despite her recent mobility issues, though the picture on the front page of the Sun showing the Queen on horseback is a library picture. It's not actually a picture of her back in the saddle, though it is sources inside Windsor Castle who say she is riding again.
Right. Well, you might spot her if you're in Windsor Great Park or something, you have to see. Let's go through the papers now. Joining us this morning, editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, and author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson. Good to see you both this morning. Tom, let's start with the Mail, should we? And the Rwanda issue and the PM and Prince Charles.
Yes, so whilst those by-election bombshells are going off here 4,000 miles away, Boris Johnson's in Rwanda with Prince Charles, and more discussion of the tension between those two men, between the future head of state and our current Prime Minister, over the question of the Rwanda policy. We already know, that Prince Charles has privately expressed concerns about the policy, calling it appalling, according to one Times story a couple of weeks ago, and concerns from his side that this would effectively overshadow this Commonwealth summit, which was already pre-planned and was planned before the announcement of the policy itself. Boris Johnson here reportedly not wanting to be seen to be rebuking Charles, but nevertheless that's how it's been written up, saying that critics of the policy should keep an open mind. And I think just so much of this sort of lays the track, I think, for what could be coming insofar as, unlike the Queen, who has very managed to kind of stay out of politics whatsoever, Charles has, whether it's entirely of his own fault in this case, has found himself to be more politicised. His views do manage to get out there in the public, even when he hasn't made a direct intervention in himself. So I think this is potentially something that we could see more of, given the fact that we know so much about what Prince Charles thinks about the world.
Interesting, isn't it?
Going to be a very awkward cup of tea they have together, apparently, before they meet the other Commonwealth leaders.
Talking of the Queen, Nikki, in the Sun, this horse riding story is fascinating, actually.
Yeah.
I think, heck, any 96-year-old getting on a horse is quite something. I mean, she's got her mobility issues. It's interesting that she feels that she wants to get back on the saddle.
Well, I think what we know about the Queen is she absolutely loves her horses, doesn't she? I mean, she's ridden since she was a little girl. So I can imagine that it's such a precious activity for her. Why would she want to give it up, I suppose? And maybe it's a positive sign, actually, because there's been so much discussion about her health problems and, people worrying about just how well she is, given the sort of things she's been cancelling recently. So maybe it is actually a sign that she is feeling better. And so Yeah, it's got to be a positive thing. But I mean, I'm terrified of horses, so I just think it's amazing that she can get on one
Well,
horse.
she's lived her whole life on horse.
She has,
And you can imagine, I mean, we don't know what her mobility issues are, but once she's on the horse, she might well feel really comfortable.
And maybe it's better for her because if she's, riding, at least she's kind of moving. So maybe it actually is more beneficial for her than not.
She'll be happy. Tom, tell us about Wet Wipe Island. I can't believe this.
Yeah, this is it's probably a bit early for this story, but so this is a discovery that essentially there's something called Wet Wipe Island, the size of 2 tennis courts in the Thames, which is basically formed of all of those wet wipes that people have flushed down the toilet, and obviously people are always urged not to do so. Apparently it also makes up a large percentage of what they call fatbergs, which again is a slightly unpleasant thing to talk about this, Al, as far as blocking many of the pipes and sewage.
So there it is in the Thames, and it's nothing but wet wipes all clinging together. And
essentially, it's near Hammersmith and it's near Hammersmith Bridge, and apparently it actually slightly changes the course of the Thames. As the source near has talked about, you can actually stand on it. So this being part of a kind of discussion as to why people shouldn't flush these things down the toilet because of the fact that they do collect. Well, that would be a job.
does it stay put, or does it float?
From what I can tell here, and it's just a small story, I'm not as much of an expert on Wet Wipe Island as I might like, is the fact that it is kind of static, it is kind of stuck there, and it's actually changing the course of the Thames as a result. So again, a lot of that kind of ongoing discussion about these things, disposable sort of materials and the rest of it that we use each day, can actually have a impact.
That would affect the boat race, wouldn't it?
Affect everything.
Well,
do they have to navigate around Wet Wipe Island?
they do.
Well, it's
like a
interesting
sort of
that
slalom or something.
Yeah, nearly all wet wipes now say they're biodegradable. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it's kind of thing that's used in marketing because people do still use it.
But if they are biodegradable, I think it takes like 1,000 years.
So therefore it's not any
Every plumber you will ever meet
Says do not flush these things. Even the ones that say we are flushable,
Yeah.
do not flush them because they lock up your loos and everything else.
There are only 3 Ps that should be flushed. Poo, pee and paper.
Oh, right. Yeah. Thank you. Well,
They say.
look, I would say it's a bit brief this morning because we've been chit-chatting about resignations so far, but we'll catch up with you two a little bit later on. Tom and Nikki, thank you.